Everybody. Yay. I'm so happy to see everyone out here in this beautiful space because I learned something coming here because we rolling.
We rolling.
Come out. So I learned something, a marriage lesson coming into this space. Because he wanted to rent out a place for our first podcast. And I was like, for what? Why we got to do all that? Right. And then he's like, I just want you to see it. And when I walked in, I was like, girl, you need to hush. Because this is just gorgeous. And I'm so excited to be here to talk about trust the process. Can everybody hear me pretty good? I'm going to try not to get too loud in the mic because y'all know how I am. But it's an honor for us to be able to tell our story publicly for the first time. Some of our friends that are in this room and elsewhere may know a little bit about our story. But then we also want to, and it was a process, right? But we also want to talk about you trusting your process, which is like the heartbeat of my husband because he, as he told me his story about his family dynamic and the things that he experienced growing up, he's like, I skipped a lot of steps because there was nobody there to teach me because he lost his parents young. And so he was like, in my 50s, I had to learn a lot of things that other people got taught when they were kids and teenagers and so forth. And so the process became very, very important to him, not only for him, but for making sure that other people, trust the process, don't rush the process, go through the process. And so there was a crazy process involved with us coming together. And so we just we just want to share. It was all full of nothing but God and prayer and all of that kind of stuff. So it's gonna be a little funny, and we're hoping that it inspires you to trust your process. Because when you go through the process and you get through waiting on something and you finally receive it, then you start waiting on something else. And so life is just a continual process. And so we better be trusting it or we're gonna be frustrated a whole lot. So I'm gonna pass the mic to my husband and then we're gonna talk about how we met.
Yeah, we start.
All right.
All right, so I'm a New Yorker, so I always gotta give my shout outs to everybody that showed up. We are live. We decided to go live for our first one. We kept putting it off. My schedule was kind of hectic. And then I was like, man, we about to do this. And then she was like, we should go live. I said, I bet, whatever. You know what I mean? Because like anything that she says, I go with because I don't always have the greatest idea. And I had to that's one of the things that I had to learn is that, as highly as intelligent as I am, to have a partner who is just as smart or smarter. And I rely on that, to be able to correct me in certain situations. And even in this situation, some things that I didn't know about when it came to renting a space. But the only thing I knew was what I seen. Like, okay, I seen the vision, but I didn't have the whole vision. And then when she just started talking, it was like, okay, God was like, yo, listen, what you thinking is not what you should be thinking here. Let me just give what you need to have. And so at one point, I didn't have nothing in my head about this up until like the day before yesterday. She was like, it's you. Said you got this, and this. And so I'm sitting at the table like, okay, we about to go to war. But I just want to say thank you to everybody that came out today. Thank you everybody that's online that's watching, and I have a couple of people who are gonna catch this later on. Our webpage will be going up in a couple of weeks, but our YouTube page will happen in 24 hours. It's definitely called Smoking Fire Podcast. Um, man, listen, this is my first time doing this like this. I was nervous, but then, just the natural me just came out when she gave me the mic. So as you can see, I'm not stuttering anymore. You feel me? But yeah, like I said, shout out to everybody that came out today. I know the Bengals are playing. Shout out to everybody online. Shout out to everybody in Brooklyn, everybody back in New York. Shout out from who are overseas. I got people overseas right now. And, I just hope that today, after today, something else is going to happen. I already know it is. Something else is going to happen. And I hope that we can leave some jewels with you guys because, in this room right here, just alone, everyone here, I've never met you guys before, have I? No. Okay, we're going to get with you and I'm going to get Jai. And Flo, okay, Flo in the bill. That's what's up. So, but everyone that's sitting in here acquired a level of knowledge from and wisdom from. And so I hope today that everything that you poured into us, we'll be able to pour back to you tenfold. So you give the mic to Rhonda because she be itching to tell this story. And I'll be itching to be like, nope, that ain't how it happened.
Okay, so good. We
Nope already. Nope already. We're gonna start nope already.
So there was a process. A lot of people know my story. And we're super excited when all of this came to be because of my story. So there was a process before we got here of me walking through almost 15 years of singleness as a result of the passing of my first husband. And so that's a long waiting period. You know what I mean? To be trusting God for something. And there were moments, there was a lot of time where I wasn't worried about finding anybody else or falling in love or getting married again. But there was a good span of time where that was something that I desired. And I walked a long time, not really knowing what God was going to do, but just knowing that He was going to do something. And so even when this all came to be, there was a process in that of even being able to receive the thing that you've been praying for. Because we think, okay, this is what I want, Lord, and I'm believing and we doing all of this stuff. But then when it comes, we realize that I might not have been as prepared as I thought that I was, or maybe I'm used to sabotaging things because I had a very unexpected loss. And so as a result of that loss, I was not holding on to a lot of things. I would experience it and enjoy it, but at any moment it could be gone. And so I kind of had that mentality. So I didn't really allow God to really bless me because I was always waiting on the moment when it wasn't going to be there. And I'm going to have to pick up the pieces and all of that kind of stuff. So even when it came, it was a process and, okay, wait a minute. You need to be able to keep what you asked for. So, but how we met was really crazy. Can we tell it? Can we tell our story? Okay. Yeah. Okay. So, I went through a season where I was very content, and then I wasn't. And when the wasn't happened, it was March of 2020 when wasn't nobody meeting nobody because we were all in the house, barely going to the grocery store. I was ordering my groceries from Kroger. So I'm like, Lord, you allowed me to go through this period of contentment after such a hard loss. And now when the desire comes back, I can't even meet nobody. So I remember one day as I was kind of lamenting and going through that, and you know how it is sometimes, or maybe I'm the only one, where when you want something, you just start looking at it, looking at other people's stories of getting it, trying to get inspiration. So I was watching How I Met My Husband videos this one particular day, torturing myself because I'm like, it's the pandemic, you're not going to meet no husband, but that's what I was doing and kind of praying and just talking to God, like, what's really going on? Like, I was good, and then you made it where I'm not good, and there's nothing that I can do about it. And so my phone rang on this particular day, and I was washing dishes, crying, oh Lord, whatever. And so my friend was on the phone. She's like, hey girl, what's going on? And I'm like, hey, ain't nothing. And she's like, you ain't gonna never guess why I'm calling you. And I said, what's that? And she started telling me about this guy that she knew. And he was a good guy and this and that. And she was telling me some different things about him and how she knew him and all of that kind of stuff. And so she's like, and I was in my kitchen washing dishes. And the Lord, I thought about him like, this is a good man, and I know some good single women. So she started going down her list, forgot about me. She going down her list of single friends, like, and the Lord spoke to her and said, introduce him to Rhonda. And she's like, really? Like I wasn't good, like I wasn't a good. So she's like, okay. So she calls him, from what I understand, and they have this conversation on their side. And then he's like, yeah. So if she's interested, tell her she can give me a call. So she calls me and tells me this. And I'm like, what? So I look him up on Facebook and I'm like, okay. So yeah, but if we talk, he needs to call me. You can give him my number. I'm not calling him. And I'm just old school that way. And I'm not really tripping about being old school because I think we need a little bit of that back sometimes. So he called within 5 minutes. We had a great conversation that lasted for about 2 or 3 hours. And it was just amazing. And we had a lot in common, kept me laughing. And in the midst of this pandemic, we couldn't even meet. So we were like video chatting and talking on the phone because, there was no vaccine, nothing. And that's how we met. And so I'm gonna pass the mic to him because he has his perspective. But as the conversations went on, I started praying because that's what I do. And so I was like, okay, Lord, if he's the one, then I want us to pray together. You know how we do, where we like, Lord, if this is it, whatever. And so we talked on the phone like we always did for hours. And at the end of the conversation, he's like, hold on, before we get off the phone, let's pray. So I was like, check, okay. So we prayed and it was all good and we continued to have great conversations. But there was like a month or more that we were doing this back and forth, but we never physically saw each other. We would video chat and all that, but nobody was meeting. And so we were getting close to the time where we were like, well, we want to meet. And I was talking to a friend and I was like, so I really want to meet up with him, but I don't want to do it alone. I want to kind of get together with the couple who put us together and see if we can do a double date. And I really don't want to say that because I don't want him to be like, I'm 50 years old. I don't need to chaperone on a date. And so I didn't say anything. So that night, after I had that conversation with my friend, he's like, I think it's time for us to meet face to face. He's like, however, I'm going to reach out to our friend and see if they will, double date with us without me ever expressing to him that that's what I desired. It was on his mind. So I'm like, okay, so God was just checking the boxes as I was praying. He was checking the boxes. And then, should I pass the mic to you?
No, no, come on. You driving the car, bro.
So I'll fast forward past a lot of things. We ended up meeting with our friends. They hosted us in their home, ordered us takeout because again, there was no vaccine. People was dying left and right. It was just all of that going on. So we were even taking a risk, even doing that, and they were taking a risk welcoming us into their home because he worked with the public and all of that. So it was just God. And so we get to their house and they have this dinner prepared and they're having this conversation with us like, you guys need to be friends for 3 months. And they was kind of walking us through the relationship goals, the Mike Todd book and all of that kind of stuff and the things that we needed to do. And she kept saying, these are the things that you need to do to prepare for your marriage. And she really didn't mean that. Like she was trying to say, as you are building this friendship, these are the components that you need to be sure that are in place for your relationship if you guys decide to enter into a relationship. But every time she went to say relationship, marriage came out. So we're sitting there. This is our second time because we did sneak and like meet once in a parking lot, like just got to see you, kind of thing. And so, but this is like our second time even being in each other's presence. And she just kept saying, for your marriage, you need to do this, and for your marriage, you need to do that. And so we're sitting there like, and so her husband was like, you, and she was like, and he's like, you keep saying marriage. And she was like, God, I'm sorry, I meant marriage. And so she was like, well, I don't know. I just can't help it. That's just what it is. And so we had dinner there, went out for ice cream after that. And then we went to my house and he would not come in and he was not invited to come in. We sat on my porch listening to R&B. And if anybody knows me, you know I love me some music and I love R&B. So he's playing me his favorite song. And then I play my favorite song. And then we just started letting the music play. And we both were like, this is like the best date that either one of us had ever had. And from there, just evolved this friendship, relationship. And there was a lot of stuff that happened in the process. You want to talk about the process?
All right, so this is where the water for me gets muddy. This is where the water for me gets muddy. You know, again, growing up, missing out on a lot of things because not having my parents, at least having one. If I had one, I probably would know how to navigate a lot better than I did. But I was also, before I met Rhonda, I was going through a divorce. And there were some things that I had to get settled in myself. Again, at 50 years old, you are realizing there's a lot of things you don't know. You don't know. Like I did not honestly, up until the moment that we sat out on the porch, I didn't honestly know how to court a woman. At 50, I'm learning this. You know what I'm saying? So it's like I'm asking a lot of questions, and I'm saying to myself, like, okay, this is how we do this. So now I'm like, all right, here we go. I got past one hurdle. But the thing that I was dealing with was a lot of maturity. I wasn't mature in this space because when I got married before, my idea of love, honestly, was sex. And so, when you're young and you're not shown, your a mother's love or a grandmother's love, they're not, you don't have that. You don't have the reassurance and the things of that nature dealing with what a woman teaches, when it comes to love, because they're the first nurturer. That's who you learn it from. And besides God, of course, but I'm talking about in the physical, you learn it from your mother. And so I didn't have that, and I didn't understand that. So when I was married for 14 and a half years, I had to learn it. So when I was by myself, I was like really on a journey to learning. And so when I got with Rhonda, it was like, look, this thing is about to be a challenge, man. I didn't want to face it. I didn't want to deal with it. It was times like, nah, I can't do this. And she was like, what? Now listen. I have my version because my version is like the comedic version, but it's true. And she got witnesses, so she got receipts in the building. She got receipts in the building, okay, that of what actually happened. You know what I mean? So the court of law, I'm all guilty. You know what I mean? But meeting Roger at that time was it was definitely different. It wasn't like your run of the mill kind of relationship or person that you meet on a dating site. Like you don't meet women like this on a dating site. Mm-hmm. And so I was on dating sites like, but none of them like floated my boat the way that she did. But I felt like I couldn't deal with her because I wasn't ready. Because again, I was equating sex and love, and that was the relationship. So, I had to learn how to communicate better. I had to learn how to court. I had to learn how to listen. I had to learn how to a lot, man. I didn't know. I didn't know. But when I told her that I couldn't I couldn't do it the first time. Mind you have to know I did this several times. So,
Yeah, step back, please.
so
So the first time we were being obedient to our leaders, with the 3 months of friendship, and then you can move into a courtship. And so we got about what, 2 weeks shy of the 3 months, and he started acting funny. And so this is really a process because I'm the person where if you start acting flaky, I will leave you alone. Like, period. I don't have time, da 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 da, was all that. And so he started acting flaky, and one day he calls and he's like, I just think we should be friends and blah 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 blah. This is I'm not ready for a relationship, so that's fine. She's like, okay, fine. If that's what you want to do, whatever. So I think 2 days went past, and he was like, actually, I was tripping. I want a relationship. Can we go together? And you can come on. So he's like, can we go together? And I'm like, okay, are you sure this is what you want to do? Because, we really don't have to do this because you was just unsure 2 days ago. And so he's like, no, 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 I was tripping. I talked to my brother and I talked to my friend and da da da. And they told me I was tripping and I'm tripping. So can we do this? I'm like, okay. So I think we did that for like 2 weeks. He was my boyfriend, I guess. I really didn't even know what to call it because what right, It was like he was there, we were talking, everything was still whatever. But it was just something missing from what was going on in this relationship. So but he was doing things like acts of service, which is really just how he is with everybody. So he came over to cut my grass. He's like, no, I don't like the way your grass look. I'm gonna get this together and whatever, whatever. So he comes over and he cuts my grass. And so he came over. So I was like, well, I'm gonna make him dinner, or I think I may have bought you dinner or something. And so there was just something in the pit of my stomach was like, this ain't right, and you ain't getting ready to keep doing this. So we're sitting across the table from each other. I was a trip too. And I said, babe, if someone asked you who I was, what would you tell them? Like, who was Rhonda to you? And he got his little Chipotle bowl, and he like, you somebody I'm dating. And I was like, but that's not what you asked me for, right? So he gets quiet. And he's like, okay. So I don't even remember how we got through that because I was through with you. And he leaves. He's like, I gotta go home and do my podcast and blah, blah, blah. So the next morning he calls me and he's like, I think we should just be friends. I can't do this. I'm not ready. So this is the third time, right? Have y'all been counting? Okay.
Yeah.
So I was like, go on about your business, bruh. It's cool, no problem. We can be friends, that's fine. And so his idea of let's be friends was never call me again for like 7 months, right? I was like, what kind of friendship? Listening like she ended up married to him. Like, what's wrong with her going with this? So 7 months go by. I'm like, Lord, I prayed all the prayers. You answered them. You saying this is the guy, but he tripping, and I hadn't talked to him in 7 months, so whatever. And so I went through a process of like, I really gotta cling to the Lord here so that I can know what I'm doing and whatever. And I still have to maintain my joy in the midst of all of this because I just can't let this, take me there. And so I really developed a closeness with the Lord during that time. And I got excited about life and myself and all of that. I was raising my daughter and doing my thing. And I just didn't let it stop me. And there was a period where it was just like, okay, I'm over that. I'm good. I'm good. And I could think about it and not be mad and all this. And so as as I'm being over it, and I'm on my way on vacation for spring break with my daughter, my phone rang, and it was you, right? And so he goes, I don't think that this was how you doing and all of this. He tried to, do the preliminary things. But then he's like, I don't think the end of our story back then, all those 7 months ago, was the end. I think that that was just the beginning. And I would really, like to see you and all of this. And so I was like, well, when I come back from out of town, because you know how when girls say they're going out of town, you don't know what they was really doing. I was going with my daughter spring break, but I was like, when I come back from out of town, I can talk to you, whatever. So I called him and I can't remember when we started going out for coffee or something.
Yeah, we had went to Newport on 11.
Oh, yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
now I don't remember.
So
I don't remember a lot of things, but I do remember this. Just know that was the last time I was going to say to her, "We're just going to be friends."
he didn't even say.
You want to go? She about to tell it all today. Come on, here you go.
So in the midst of that 7 months, that we were apart, he turned 50. And so when January came around, I thought about it, like, what he's doing and all of that and whatever. Did I text you? Did I say happy birthday? I didn't.
You did.
I don't think I did.
You did.
So anyway, but I thought about it. So when we were walking on the little Newport on the Levee, the bridge, the Purple People Bridge, it was freezing because that was what, like April maybe, but it was cold.
Oh,
And so I'm out there looking across the water, and he looking out like, I'm so glad you're back in my life, and da da da. And I looked at him and I said, what you do for your birthday when you turn 50? How'd you end up celebrating? And he was like, oh, I went to Florida. And he just keeps talking because my husband just, gets excited. He's telling stories. And I was like, so I let him talk for a minute. I was like, you went to Florida for your 50th birthday by yourself? Because when he told me initially that he wasn't ready, he's like, I'm not ready for a relationship at all. I just need to be by myself. So I was like, you went to Florida for your birthday by yourself for 50? And he's like, no. So right there, I was like, I am done with this dude right here. Like, you can kiss my grits. That's one of my words. Don't get excited. And so, I don't even remember how we got home because when I get mad, I stop talking. Period. Like he was talking to a brick wall after that. I was just like, no. And I think you called me the next day. He called me the next day, which was a Sunday. And I answered the phone and he's like, hey, what's up? And I was like, what we doing? What is what you want? Because with Florida, not by yourself and all that. And he's like, I'm just trying to develop a friendship with you. And I was like, I'm not interested. And hung up and we didn't talk again for another 7 months.
Not yet, no. Yeah, about 6, 7.
It was another 6 or 7 months. And that's God started placing him on my heart. And for those who may not know on the stream, oh my God. Okay, I'm gonna stay focused. Somebody that I really love just walked in. But God, I'm an intercessor. And so God will start showing me somebody and just putting them on my heart and putting them on my heart when he wants me to pray for them. And so when he started doing that with him, I was like, I'm not praying for him. You can ask somebody else. Oh, whatever. And so God was just like, whatever. And so he kept putting him in my face. And so usually if prayer is enough, after I pray for the person, they'll kind of go away and, I've done what I'm supposed to do. And so I was like, all right, I will pray for him because you keep, because you didn't understand. Like, I was like, this person doesn't exist because you play too much and I'm not like buying on it. So I was like, I will pray for him, but that's it. So I prayed and he kept showing him to me and showing him to me and showing him to me. And that usually means for me that I need to reach out to the person and make sure that they're okay. And I was like, I have prayed. I am not calling. And so the Lord was like, you gonna do what I say. And I was like, actually, I'm not. So I texted because I was supposed to call. Like, actually, I'll just text him. That's all I can get. So I was like, hey, you've been on my mind. whatever. And he knew that about me with the intercession piece. And so I was like, God keeps showing me your face. I'm just reaching out to make sure you're okay. So I get this text back that was like a 12-page letter with all the pictures that he took of us on Newport on the Levee when he got on my nerves. And it was just like, he's like, I think we need to talk. And by then I was dating somebody else that I really liked. And I was like, for what? And he's like, nah, I think we need to, I think we need to talk. And so he ended up coming to my house because again, I'm working from home. Things are still, it's a vaccine, but things are still kind of in the house. Comes over to my house, brings me lunch. I got my laptop doing my work. He has his laptop doing his work. And we just sat across from each other and just were with each other. And I was just like, you know what I mean? Again. And it was crazy. And so one night, I'll fast forward because it was a process, y'all. Can you see that it was a process and how you gotta trust the process? Because here we are. Um, he called me one night and I was on my way to pick my daughter up from her game. And I had tried to call the other guy and he didn't answer the phone. So he calls and I'm like, okay, let me see what he wants. Because to me, this was just my friend. Because this is what you want. You want a friend. So I'm gonna be your friend. And so he calls me and he's very emotional. And he's just like, I had this conversation with one of my sisters, and I was telling her about I don't understand why I'm still single and whatever, whatever. And so she was like, oh yeah, you understand why you still single. You know exactly why. And he's like, what you mean? What you mean? And she said, well, who do you have like before you? Like what kind of, women you got before you? So he named some other chick and me. And so she said, well, if you were caught in a snowstorm in the middle of the night and you were stranded on the side of the road, which one would come get you? And he was like, Ron. And she was like, then that's your wife. So he's telling me this on the phone and he's emotional. And I'm looking at the phone like this. And the other guy's calling me in the middle of his like this, telling me all of this. And so I don't know, the next day I think you came over and he was like, you mind, we together, we on our way, we gonna get married. And so there was a process even after that. You want to talk about that process before we get into it?
Yeah. All right. So during that time, I was I'm over at Rockdale, getting my life together. Really getting into service, getting into my word and everything. During that time, I'm growing up. I'm asking questions. I'm watching a lot of things. You know, Mike Hall and Minister Donna. I speak to them a lot, um, and it was just amazing to me how I began to transform and start filling in the blanks of the things that I didn't know. And the lovely thing about being around married couples, married people, like really, really married people. And the reason why I emphasize really married people, because it doesn't matter how much you argue, no matter how much you disagree, no matter how much you laugh, no matter how much you cry, no matter how much you want to walk away from this person, these people don't. And I've seen that. And for me, it was like, oh, so this is what it's about for real. It's not about just sleeping in the living room. No, you need to come on back in here and sleep on this side of the bed too. You're not sleeping out there. And so when I began to understand who I was becoming as a man first, things started to really fall in line on how I needed to treat Rhonda. Because God said to me, He said, no, not this one here, you won't do it. He said, you won't do it to this one here. And it was the second 7-month period that I began to grow up. I got quiet and I started to, you know, get vulnerable with myself. Like I had so much pinned up stuff, things that I thought that I dealt with, things that I thought that I moved on from, you know, but I realized I didn't. And when God said, not this one you won't, he really meant that. Like I will separate you from her. You won't do this to her. You won't do what you did last time, this time. Last time you didn't know. Now you know. So you accountable. Mhm. So here we are. I stay claim to mine. I never felt like that before. I never felt like I had a claim in the world to somebody, because when I was younger, my godmother always used to say to me that, Vince, you're going to find someone that deserves you because of so much love that you give out, and I didn't realize in that time that I was pouring from an empty cup, but I just kept pouring and didn't know how I was pouring into people the way that I was. And Rhonda was pouring into me too, but I had a hole in the cup still. I'm pouring into other people while she trying to pour into me. And it's like, no, you won't. Not this one, you won't. You won't. I won't let you allow her to waste her time in her wisdom if you're not willing to put your best into you to be with her.
I just want to say something about that. For those who are in a process where you're waiting on anything, whether it's a relationship, a marriage, a career, a business, something to happen with your children, any of that, like anything that you're waiting on something to take off. So on my side of things, it looked like I was just waiting. And I knew that God was doing stuff, but you don't always see the fruit. And then you have something going on here, and it's like, this looks like it's it, and then it looked like it ain't, da 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 da. So it's a lot of back and forth. But all that time, God was working behind the scenes on both of us, for both of us. And it's a very humbling thing to know now that God was like, I think so much of you that I told him, no, you ain't gonna do that to her. You're not gonna waste her time. You're not gonna treat her the way that you treated other people. So you might be waiting on something and you get antsy and you like, what is going on? Can we just get to it? And you don't know what God is restraining back from you, where he's saying, not her, not him. It ain't gonna be something mediocre for them. When it finally comes, it's gonna be the real thing. And so part of the process and trusting the process is knowing that if something isn't happening, it is because God may be restraining back something from you, that you don't really want. And so this was the man, but that wasn't the time. And I had to be okay with the process of waiting and is it this, is it that, or whatever. And now that I sit on the other side of it, I'm just like, how merciful God is, how loving he is to be like, I want the best for you and I'm going to have the best for you, even if you have to wait a little longer, even if I have to delay it, even if I have to work on some things in you and him. He was like, you will have the best. And I do now have the best. Right now. So I'll fast forward a little bit because I know my husband has some things on his heart that he wants to share. And we want to be honoring of your time because we know that it's a Sunday evening. Y'all probably done been to church, watched games, did all this and that.
Let me add to that real quick. The blocking of things in the marriage is a critical piece because a lot of times that I've noticed is that when you're in a relationship and God is blocking something from one and allowing something to happen for another, you have to be careful because even though favor may not be happening on one side, it's still happening for both. And it may not be what you want to happen, but you still got to be the best cheerleader for the other person because your time is coming. Because your time is still both of your time. It's just that what he's allowing to happen is going to better you two in the kingdom.
That's good.
So we ended up, I think we were in marriage counseling and had we knew that we were gonna get married before he even proposed. So all these things were happening that I normally would not allow. You know, it was like going on, like what's going on? And so in that, God was teaching me about patience, about his will, and there were some things in me, like when we were our happiest, I ended up having to go to therapy because I was like always waiting because of stuff that had happened with us, but also things that had happened in my life beforehand. I was always waiting for the next time where it wasn't just gonna be what I thought it was gonna be. And so when he really locked in to our relationship, I was still waiting on when's the next time that something crazy is gonna happen. So I ended up having to go to therapy. So I contacted this place that offers counseling for women. And they were like, well, what do you need counseling for? And I was like, I need to know how to navigate through joy. And they were like, what? Because like people come because they trauma and grief and this and that. We've never heard anybody say, I'm happy and I want to stay that way, but I don't know if I know how. And so they were like, we need a minute to show you something to counsel you because, you know, this is a unique situation. And I ended up going because I had prayed all that time. Things had come to fruition. He was locked in. He was proving that he was locked in. And I was still petrified, you know? And it was such an unsettling thing to know that you have now, you're walking into your answered prayers and you don't know how to say yes. You don't know how to embrace it. And so I had my process with that. And so even I say again, like whatever it is that you're waiting on, when it comes, there may be another process that you have to walk through to be able to really fully enjoy what you've asked for. Because I had to walk through that. Like after all the back and forth and the disappointments that I had suffered even beforehand, God had to get me to a place where like I need you to trust me that it is what it is this time, you know. And if we don't trust that, we can undo everything that God is trying to do when He's answering our prayers. And so we ended up, I think the day before we were supposed to start marriage counseling, day after my birthday, he's like, he did another one of those. So my pastor was like, me and you could go to dinner, and him and my husband, I don't know what they doing because we ain't going to this meeting. And I was like, no, we're not going to this meeting. So my apostle he got him together, got me together. We got in the office, and really it was like he's like, I'm scared, you know. I want this. I know I need this. But, you know, he started telling me about things that he experienced growing up and then I'm like, oh, this is what I've been looking at. And so we were able to get through all of that. And it's just been amazing ever since. And so your process may look a little rough. It may look a little rocky. It may look like nothing that you thought it would look like. But if you trust God in the midst of your process, you can end up in a beautiful place with a beautiful testimony because to sit here and tell you that everything went perfectly from A to Z wouldn't help you, you know. But to see how we both had to take steps to get what we were desiring, and God had to work in him, he had to work in me, and he's continuously working through us together. Hopefully is encouraging to you in whatever process that you find yourself in right now.
I want to talk about the time, right? when when Bucky Katana asked Uh, so when you gonna be, how long you gonna be engaged? And like, hey, listen, what I say, like 2 years?
No, you said 5. He said
5 years. I said 5 years, right?
And I said, "Well,
Hey, too much. And so, you know, again, it was the misconception of what society said that this is how it's supposed to be. And because you didn't have the dynamics in front of you just to tell you there is no perfect time. Your finances won't all be in order. Every problem that you thought that you could navigate through won't always be solved. And so when Buck looked at me like, huh?
like y'all my kids."
Yeah, ain't kids. And so it took me back to a time where an old man said to me, he said, a man knows what he wants to do within 5 minutes of meeting him. Wow. Automatically knows. 5 minutes. And I thought he was lying when I was young. But when you're around a bunch of players that's what it was for me when I was young. I was around a lot of street dudes. But the old man told me that. And I didn't believe him at first. And so when I met Rhonda, it was like really honestly, yeah, that's all right. But I just knew I and couldn't be that person and her be my wife. I couldn't be that right in that moment. I couldn't be that person. And so, the process of going through what we had to go through, like we had to become vulnerable. Really, and for me, being vulnerable was easy, but being accountable wasn't. So I had to learn to become accountable in my vulnerability. And so, like, that was hard for me. And so when we got to marriage counseling, with Apostle and Pastor Dolores, it was, I could see her across from the table, like, look, we're gonna put these gloves on, my boy. You act up.
Me or Pastor Dolores?
Pastor Dolores was like, we're gonna put these gloves. She was giving me this look. I'm like, say something wrong, bro. You about to see it all come up out of me. You're not gonna do that to mom. You know what I'm saying? And so when we got to that place, when we both got there, I had to like, yo, look, when we got here, let it all out. Because she really needs to know like the process that I was going through and the things that I really, really missed out on. And Apostle filled in a lot of those blanks too. Him growing up in New York for a while as much as he did, he got to understand the New York state of mind. And he began to explain, the way that I act and how come I was, in this place and in this space. And so I still, at that time, I couldn't use it as an excuse to stay where I was at. Because I kept using it to stay where I was at. I kept making excuses of not wanting to evolve. But when I got fully locked in to understand, like, yo, this is where it is, bro. Like, you're not getting no better than this right now. This is it. This is it. There's no more for you out here. Now, that's a conversation that she didn't know I had with God. I was like, hey, I'm not giving you nothing else. I spared your life millions of times. I done kept you away from things that you could have fell victim to. I pulled you out of alcoholism. I kept you away from drugs. The things that you should have been in prison for, you didn't get in trouble for. I kept you away from that. And I spared you early. Even when your parents died, I spared you early. And I put a whole bunch of other things in place for you. How much more do you want from me? Like don't have that level of conversation. Like everyone has their own relationship with God. I pray y'all do. But I talk to God like, yo, what's up? Like you sitting in front of me like you my God, but I know you my father, so I don't be disrespectful in my conversation. And anytime that I get there, you be like, all right, Vince, you need to listen. But I'm not gonna keep talking to you like this. And I always, and when he went silent about her, that's when I really knew, yo, you gotta stop playing. So being accountable in my vulnerability, man, that was like probably the toughest thing ever. That forgiveness was easy for me. Like I could forgive anybody. But being accountable for somebody's heart, that's different. Like you going so deep with this person, like this person gonna live with you in a cardboard box if she got to. All the way to the mansion on the hill. All the money with no money. I'm here. If we can't go out, we cooking. We gonna create a meal. Rice and beans, we ain't got no meat, we eating still. I'm gonna make that happen. And every day from day one, she has never let me not. This was before marriage. She always been a woman of her word. And I never had that. So when I got there, I didn't know how to navigate that. I was talking to the brothers about that. But then I realized too, wait a minute. I say, I couldn't get a full understanding from my brothers sometimes because of how I came up. So I said, you know what, women know women. So let me talk to my sisters. And so I would go to my sisters, they'd be like, well, Rhonda said this. What? Okay, bro, sit down. Let me tell you what she meant. This is what she means. Okay. And so when I began to do that, and I'm like, okay, my brothers are telling me how to conduct myself as a married man in the kingdom. And so my sisters are talking to me about what your wife is saying to you. Because sometimes we hear with a different ear. Men are from Mars, women are from Venus. We hear with a different ear. So you can say, hey, go to the store, get a loaf of bread, quarter milk, and a stick of butter, right? Because we don't went to the grocery store with you 25, 30 times, we should know the bread, the milk, and the butter to get, right? Well, now we coming back with milk, bread, and butter.
Butter? People wearing no blue bonnet in here.
And let me give you a prime. That's one example. Let me give you a prime example. So one day I went to the store to get some potato chips, right? So, so, so she likes, right? So she likes Cheetos, Flaming Hots, right?
I'm like, bring me back some Flaming Hot.
And so her and Gabby wanted some Flaming Hots, right? So we already know what I'm thinking. Flaming Hots, right? So I go pick up 2 boxes of the small Flaming Hots.
No, bring back the red hot, the little cinnamon candy.
Yeah.
So,
Beautiful
Flaming Hots.
Okay, we do say Flaming Hot on the box.
No,
It's all right.
Never found no blue bonnet.
Well, now a whole lot better at asking, are you sure this is what you want? Okay, what brand do you want me to get? So now understanding, you know what I'm saying? So those
I send pictures now.
yes. Yeah, yeah. Specific instructions on what to do, you know what I mean? So yeah, I'm passing my dog because we're gonna go into this next segment.
So I'm gonna let my husband close us out. I really appreciate everybody coming just to listen to our story. We are going to be doing the Smoke and Fire podcast every second and fourth Monday
8 o'clock.
at 8 o'clock, 8 p.m. So come and, tap in with us so you can hear more. Because we could condense our whole story in this hour and a half or whatever. But I just want to thank you all for coming out to share with us in our first live podcast. So besides us, when we at the altar, everybody or a lot of people know me as True Fire from poetry and everything. And so it was prophesied to us like you're fire, like you gonna come in and burn it up, but the smoke is what lingers. So she gonna come set it on fire and then you gonna just set it all in and make it linger and leave the thought that is going to captivate people and to make them think and to make them do better. And so I am happy to light the match and boom. But now we want to give you the smoke. And then, so we're gonna uh, allow him to leave you with a closing thought. And I just thank you all so much. Thank you for all who are tuning in right now. Thank you for all who will tune in the future on the replay. Thank you for being here. I love each and every person in this room. This is a beautiful space. And I'm just so grateful and thank you so much for coming out to just listen to our story, and telling your story and your testimony is so powerful. It's so important. So you may not be doing it on a podcast platform or in a space like this, but as often as you are able to tell people what you have been through and how God brought you through it, you just don't know how that is going to impact people's lives. So tell your story as often as you can, and we hope to do that every second and fourth Monday for y'all. All right?
Yes. I guess this is the moment where I get serious. Um, I'm sorry, give me a moment. God knows every plan that He has for you. Every plan. When you think it's over, knocks down another door, opens up a window, tears a house down, rips the land up, turns rivers into oceans. And in all that, He asks you just to be faithful and obedient. And even when you're not, He still is. Never changing. Always the same. 25 hours a day, 8 days a week. He takes no days off when you do. When we sleep, He's still gone. When we not in His will, He's still putting us back into His will. And I realize more so than ever, as you keep speaking, we in His will. All these people here, they in His will with us. I was speaking to you earlier about vulnerability, something that I had to become. I couldn't become that because of growing up without my parents, really without family, period. There was nothing out there for me but the streets. So all I did was just run, 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 run. There was no boundaries. I was knocking down other people's boundaries. Didn't care. Wasn't a respect in it. But for me to get to where I'm at now, I'm crying because it feels so good to be vulnerable. It feels so good to be free emotionally, mentally, physically, of all of the things that I have allowed to hold me back. But I also say that, and I speak it into you too, that whatever you're not vulnerable to, whatever you're still holding on to, you have to get free from it. You have to unpack that knapsack that you keep waking up with every morning. And you won't reach into the small compartment of the bag that you keep putting the same thing that you're holding on to into the small compartment because you think that everything is supposed to be in the big compartment, but it's not. It's in that little part of the bag where you put your flash drive in that you don't never go into, but you didn't know that you left the flash drive in there. And that flash drive is the most important stuff that you've been looking for. That you're still not free from yet. Yeah. But even in becoming vulnerable, you have to create boundaries. I didn't know what a boundary was. My wife and my brother had to beat it in me this year about creating boundaries. It's okay to say no. It's okay to take your cape off. It's okay not to be Superman anymore. You can just be Vincent Paz. I say that to all of you. There's a freedom in being vulnerable, in putting up boundaries, because you know there are people that will try to weaponize your vulnerability and your boundaries will tell them no. You have the choice of the boundaries that you set to make yourself free from all of the things that no longer matter. We are at the stages of life, some of us, where we have more years behind us than in front of us. Why do I want to keep carrying something that happened to me when I was 5 years old in my knapsack, knowing that is the one thing that kept me from loving her? Create the boundaries, what you will not allow in your space, i.e., people, places, conversations. When God says stay away from vain babblings, we always find ourselves around it anyway, then we got to find ourselves away from it, then we got to bind and rebuke it all the time. Asking God to guard our own tongue, because sometimes our responses just ain't what it need to be. And we have to fight our flesh from responding in them conversations that could just be passing by. But them spirits try to find a way to latch on to us. It's a fight every day. I'm glad to be in that fight now. And I know everyone in this room is glad to be in that fight. Your boundaries will explore and allow you the opportunity to create and tap into yourself, your relationships, and more importantly, it'll allow you to tap into God. Because if you're not in his will, he won't tell you, especially when you have a relationship. But even if he don't tell you, won't you go ask, God, is this permissible will or is this your will? Because if you're giving me permission, I don't think I want that price anymore. I don't want to do things outside his will no more. Because he may give it to you. Okay, you want to do it? But you still gonna do what I want you to do. So now you need to make a decision. Either you're gonna do what I say or do what you keep asking that you want to do. So I had to come out of that. Accountability. Let me speak about accountability for a second. It needs to be out of love. When we are our own harsh critic, we can beat ourselves up. But we have to be we can't beat ourselves up and think that, you know, in the same moment it's gonna just be okay. We have to approach our own self delicately as well. We have to hold ourselves accountable out of love. Because there are just some things you and I did not know. And even if you did know, the application process, it wasn't time to apply it. No matter how many times you try to cut through something with a sharp knife and it just didn't cut, you sitting there, do I got the right angle? Am I cutting this correctly? No, it's not time. I need to sharpen your knife so you can cut. Whoever dealt with a dull knife, how hard was it to cut an onion? God is trying to sharpen your knife. But you got to approach yourself out of love. The same way that God said approach others. Out of love. If you're going to hold yourself accountable for the things that you have done or didn't know, and you want to hold others accountable for the things that they did or may have done to you, you got to approach them out of love. Because they may not know. How fair is it that somebody walks around and you're angry at them and they don't know? How fair is that? Those are some of the things that I used to do. Passive aggressive behavior. So if we're going to hold ourselves accountable, make sure it's out of love. Be a person of your word. I wasn't that. I learned that from you, Buck. I learned that from you, Mike. Definitely learned that from Anthony. My God, Jack, I learned that from you too. Be a person of your word. I have been around me to show me what it was like to be a man of your word. Every last one of the men that I just mentioned never says nothing that they're not going to do. Take care of yourself. Be accountable for your mental health, which is very important, your emotional health, your spiritual health. You can't rely just on the past to do. You have got to be active in that. You have to pray without ceasing daily. Be willing to die to your flesh daily. Be willing to let go of those things that you think you need. Don't be afraid to go to the desert place because everybody ain't going where you going. We tell athletes that. Gotta separate yourself. But accountability helps you separate yourself. You want to trust someone that'll hold you accountable. I cannot be afraid for my wife to hold me accountable. It was hard to hear some of the things that she was saying to me in this process. Sometimes it'd be hard now. But if she don't hold me accountable, who will hold me accountable? Listen, my wife put foot down. You feel me? When she put foot down, I'll be like, okay, babe.
Vice versa.
That's right. This is your helpmate? This ain't 50-50. This 100-100. If we're gonna hit the wall, we're gonna hit it at 100 miles an hour together. And we're gonna keep doing it at 100 miles an hour together. Because I know that she's gonna hold me accountable and I her, but out of love. Holding others accountable. I said that and I keep saying that. Holding others accountable is a leads into this next segment. Is my last thing, my last point. Holding others accountable out of love requires you to be able to be vulnerable with them, to be able to tell them the truth, no matter how much it hurts them, and no matter how much it hurts you, to tell them that truth. Because your freedom of your emotions and of your mental health and your spiritual upliftment and your physical health is important. All four linked to one. How many times you don't held someone to something emotionally and affected you physically? It affected your spirit. How many times you got quiet, you couldn't pray? So we all have felt that. And then mentally, like all of your thoughts is frazzled. All because we hold on to things and because our expectation of people is high. When the truth is, man will fail you all the time. But we still keep loving on because that's our duty. But God said, don't be no fool. So, hold them accountable and put the boundaries up. And the last thing is forgiveness. Big piece. The biggest piece to the puzzle. I think forgiveness is the biggest piece to life. Well, my parents died at 5. God gave me a gift. He gave me forgiveness early. Because if I didn't forgive, didn't know how to forgive, I wouldn't be here right now. I'd probably be dead already. Because I would not have known how to walk away from a situation. I would not have known how to be quiet in a situation. I would have been chest out, standing 10 toes down for things that didn't make sense for me to be a part of. Jesus said, "Forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do." Forgive yourself of past and present situations. Again, unpack your knapsack. What are you still holding on to that you cannot change? God won't even change it for you because He done pushed you forward already. But you still holding on to it even after He done gave you the blessing. So now you ready to walk yourself backwards? No, I refuse to do that. That's what I did with Rhonda. I almost walked myself backwards out of a whole relationship because I did not want to deal with the fact that I didn't know these things. I didn't want to deal with the fact of trying to learn these things. I didn't want to do it. When he said, "This is it, bro." Okay, I get locked in. I get locked in. Forgiving others is very important because it's freedom for yourself. Freeing yourself from emotional, mental, physical captivity. It's true what they say about prison, man. The world is a big prison minus the bars. We put our own self in these captive spaces where we don't forgive. And we don't forgive with open heart. We don't forgive with the fact that forgiveness is a two-way street. It's such a two-way street that you may have to revisit the situation that you just forgave again at another point in time. So forgiveness can never be a closed door. It could never be a closed door. It's a continuous open door. You may have to visit that place again because of the depth of where it sits at in you, especially if it's wrapped around your roots. That goes from your generational curses that they say we have, that you have or we have. It could be your parent, your sibling. It could be all those things, your children. If it's wrapped around the root, oh, you're going to have to forgive it again and again until it's done. How many times you guys have felt like, I thought I forgave that situation, but I really did? Because there's more lessons in it. There's more lessons in it. Forgiveness is lessons. Forgiveness is not a punishment. Forgiveness is lessons. And lastly, I just want to tell you I thank you. I want to tell you I thank you. I want to tell all of you thank you from the bottom of my heart. You know, as Rhonda and I grow in this new thing called marriage, man, like when you look at the divorce rates, you look at all of the things that people put up Facebook, out with spouses, things like that. I say to myself, how lucky I am. I don't have a wife. I don't have a helpmate. I don't have that individual who is spiteful, who doesn't approach me, who doesn't check me, who won't check you, your wife, your husband. But if you don't have the mindset and you don't allow God in on this, it ain't gonna work. You'll keep spinning your wheels in the mud because every season is different. You may not have to do no work this season. Next season, you may have to do all the work. Next one season, she may feel like I can't do nothing. You're gonna have to be the 200%. Maybe a season where you can't do nothing. She gonna be the 200%. So every season is different. This is why I make sure you lock in every day with your me. Everything all right? You good? Pick the phone up, even if they're at work, send a text message, you all right? What about you today? And you know, we didn't say this. You know how I knew really, really she was my wife? The day I was ready to go to church and she was having a fit at church. And something was going on in her. And when I came through the doors, she looked at, I said, something just told me to come here today. So I feel my wife. You can never allow the link to be broken. You cannot. No matter what happens, you can never allow the link to be broken. You are tied to this thing when you're in. But if you 1 foot in and 1 foot out, this ain't double dutch. You ain't jumping rope. So we have 15 minutes. Anybody got any questions? Floor is open.
So I want to thank you guys for coming out. It's been a privilege to be able to share with you all just a little bit of what what we have walked through and, more to come. So this has been smoke and fire and it has been a blessing to have you all here. And I just speak blessings over you in your process, whatever it is that you're waiting on, going through, looking forward to, looking for, praying for. I speak blessings over you as you trust God in your process. I love you guys. All right. That's right.
So we got.
Right.